Yo, what is up, y'all? Dubsmind here, and today we are going to be doing the game preview for the Warriors vs Suns game. And, not much crazy news, a little bit, but yeah, I just want to cover those things, and we'll go straight into the Suns, full, preview. But yeah, let's just start off. This is not necessarily like news, but yeah, this is the article from Golden State of Mind saying it's time for Warriors to play Jonathan Kuminga. I only brought it up because, they talk about it here where it's like, this part really signifies that while the trade is feeling increasingly inevitable, the fact remains that until a move is made, the best version of the Warriors includes Kuminga. You can make the case that the worst version of the Warriors also includes Kuminga, but who cares? The most aggressively mediocre team version of the Warriors that we're seeing right now will get them nowhere, and we need to strive to actually be a good team, even if the risk is being a bad one. And I absolutely agree. Obviously, him not playing these last few games have been a bit questionable, but again, like considering how he played before all his DMPs kind of made sense, like that Bulls game made sense, but it was definitely weird that he didn't get a single minute in these last two games for these losses, because like you could have had him in for maybe like 10 minutes at times and just see how it played out, but even that didn't happen. And then it's like, thankfully Steve Kerr seems to agree sometime between me and starting finish article, or the Warriors coach all but guaranteed the fifth rear wing will return to the rotation for this game, saying that I can tell you Jake has been great this last week as he's been out of the rotation. He's working really hard, and I'm going to reward that. The thing is, like, I've already mentioned this before, I don't think the relationship between the two sides with the Warriors and JK has been that bad, honestly. Like, I don't know. I just feel like he's kind of in a situation where kind of Moody was in before, where, like, there's a whole thing about, was Moody unsatisfied with the organization back 2 years ago because of the lack of playing time? And then ended up not being true because Moody ended up signing his full extension now to stay with the team for an additional 3 years. And look at where he's at right now. I think it's just a similar situation where JK probably doesn't really hate the team. He just wants the playing time. In the case that the playing time doesn't come, obviously he would want to trade. Doesn't necessarily mean that, though, he has bad feelings against the team itself, because he still understands that what the organization is doing is not necessarily something that's completely unfair. It's somewhat reasonable. But again, it doesn't hamper him from, or doesn't prevent him from being mad about it too, because like that's still pretty reasonable too, right? So I think it just goes for both sides. Like, they have their own reasons behind why they feel that way, and they're both like valid. So I do think JK should play, and I think he still is making the effort to play well. I don't think, like, as much as he hasn't been playing well, I still don't think necessarily that the effort's not there. It just hasn't resulted in the best results, maybe just because of the fact he hasn't been getting that much play time, and he's been a bit rusty, whatever. But again, I just don't think it's necessarily him not trying. I think he is. So I would be pretty excited to see him play today, especially against the Suns, where they don't have much bigs that can really hamper Kuminga's ability to score in the paint. So I do think, yeah, it will be pretty good. So that's that. And then there is this ESPN article that's been that kind of became pretty famous among the Warriors fan base, talking about how Steph and Draymond has felt about Clay's departure from the team. I don't want to really read through the whole thing. I definitely recommend you guys read this article because it's a very good article. It just talks about the whole situation, what the Warriors, like Steph and Draymond, were feeling. And it says, in 6 days after the Warriors traded for Jimmy Butler, Dre and Steph, well, actually, the whole team, Milwaukee to Dallas in the middle of a 6-game trip. And they actually met together during that time, which, again, none of us knew really about. So, yeah. The reason why I still want to pick up this article is because this part here at the end, where Curry brought up the name Scottie Pippen as a cautionary tale. Pippen's legendary run with the Chicago Bulls ended unceremoniously, and those wounds never seem to fully heal. He doesn't want that with Thompson and their organization. I don't want that to be part of a collective story or something that he has to carry that robs him of great memories of his 13 experience. And he said at minimum he'd expect a ceremonial one-day contract for Thompson to close his career with the Warriors, but Thompson still appears to have a few years left. Could a reunion and at least a final season or two with the Warriors be possible? I don't know. Thompson said it's a long ways away, man. There's a lot of basketball to be had. I don't know what the future holds. Those around Thompson say that they believe it could actually eventually happen because there's no one that carries more weight with Clay than Steph. But Curry would have to push for it. It would be unbelievable, Curry said the idea. If that time comes and that conversation is had, of course I'm calling him and I'm saying we want you back. And hopefully that would be a welcome message from him. But as we stand right now, that does seem like a far distant reality. But so did him leaving. And just to let you guys know, this is a pretty credible article because it is by Anthony Slater and Tim McMahon, where Anthony Slater has been the athletic Warriors beat writer for the longest time. I think right now he's more just a neutral stance, but until like I think last year or 2 years ago, he was literally a Warriors specific article. So it's pretty credible, and obviously I don't think they would like make this all up and release it. You know, that's just so dumb as a PR standpoint too. I'm just bringing this up because the fact that this got released at the timing that it did, I don't know. This feels like potential Clay reunion this year, maybe. I don't know. I know that's pretty crazy to say, especially with what they specifically said down here, but the fact that it comes at this timing where I think the deadline for some of these players to get, or to not deadline, but the date for some of these players to get traded, that signed contracts and whatever the hell. I don't think Clay falls under this necessarily, but like just other players in general, is around January, early January, which is in like 2 weeks or something. And like, you know, with how bad Warriors are doing, trying to find their like, you know, identity and stuff like that, releasing this article is raising a lot of questions for me. Like, is there a real potential, you know, chance for a reunion? I don't know. I think it's possible. You know, whether or not if it's actually this year, then it's like, that's a different question. But maybe for future years, you know, I think it's possible. But ultimately, I wouldn't be that mad if he ends up coming back, obviously. Like, that'd be really, really cool. We'll just see how this year goes and how their year goes, because obviously the Mavericks are also kind of sucking right now too. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. We'll see what happens. But again, I think the Warriors still have to clean up their own mistakes before any of this becomes conversation. You know, other trades might need to be made first before something like for someone like a trade for Clay happens. So, but anyways, I still recommend you guys read this. It's a really nice article though. So very interesting though that this came out at the timing it did. I just gotta note that. Anyways, let's get into the Warriors versus Phoenix thing. Matchup predictor has us winning, which is very interesting. It's at Phoenix, 6 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, it just hasn't been a great last few games, you know, with Steph going crazy these last few games, and we're still losing against teams that are not that good, which is, you know, a Portland team that was pretty injured too, and then the game before that being a Timberwolves team without Anthony Edwards. And they also revamped the ESPN website, as you guys can tell. But anyways, this is kind of the injury report right now. Let's just go into our typical list here. And Seth Curry is questionable against the Suns. It's kind of weird he hasn't been getting the minutes that he has, especially with his first game being that strong of a, you know, impression against this, what's the team? I forgot, but yeah, like that was a really good first game. So very interesting that he hasn't still played. I do think he should, but you know, whatever. I'll leave Steve to decide that. Al Horford's still out. He still expects to miss another week of action. So damn, this thing is going much more longer than what it used to be, because I think it was only like 3 games or 4 games or something like that, and it originally happened like mid-November. I think it's just before Thanksgiving break, so it's been pretty long. And I guess this is something that you should expect, obviously, with someone like Al Horford, who's like really old. But it definitely hurts our team because, you know, we've been pretty, you know, beaten against in terms of like the boards and whatever, and we lose a big man. It's kind of unfortunate. And Pat Spencer is not playing for personal reasons, which is kind of interesting. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, I mean, I looked it up in the case that they did this, the specific reason, but obviously it's a personal reason, so that's why they didn't really disclose it, which makes sense again. I hope whatever is going on with him is good. Personal reasons, you're always a bit wary about it just because of something that might happen with them. So yeah, Phoenix. So Jalen Green's out. Still targeting return before the end of December. Isaiah Livers is questionable. Grayson Allen is questionable. And Kobe Brea, what the heck? Why is the comment about his G League game? What is this? Interesting, but he's a G League player, so he probably won't get much minutes anyways. So Jalen Green mainly out. It says Isaiah Livers is out as a status, so I guess his questionable thing that was yesterday, which is 17th, today's 18th, did get upgraded to that. They just haven't updated the comment. And Grayson Allen is questionable. If he doesn't play, that'll be a huge hole for them, obviously, not having a shooter like him. And then this is not our first time facing them, so we're going to look back at the first game that we played against them, but I don't want to make too much assumptions from this just because of the fact that they didn't have Dylan Brooks back then, which, dude, Dylan Brooks has been balling, like a balling. It's kind of crazy. Even Draymond stated on his podcast that he can potentially be an all-star this year. Like, that's how good he has been. So matchup predictor, I think, was like pretty fair. I think it has us winning, but not by much. Yeah, 58 to 41 is not like that crazy of a difference. Though I do think it should be more like probably like a 54 to like 46 or something, just because of the fact we've been losing so much, right? So yeah, Dylan's been balling, so it's like this. Honestly, yeah, let's not look back at the previous game that we faced against them because that's too long ago. We'll look at their last game, which is against the Lakers, where, yeah, it was kind of funny, apparently. I didn't watch the clips, but, like, Dillon Brooks hit, like, a big three and then got a technical or something like that. Or I think he just did one play and that ended up being the flagrant 2, which got him ejected, so that was kind of hilarious. But, yeah, Dillon Brooks, 6 for 9 from the field, 4 for 7 from the three-point line. Like, yeah. I mean, he was already a pretty good three-point shooter for the Houston Rockets last year, because, again, I remember this from the playoff series. And he was low-key killing us from 3, like, not fully, because for, you know, their team construction, obviously Dillon Brooks doesn't end up being like even their third option. He's more like their fourth and fifth option. But he was balling low-key. But yeah, Devin Booker was pretty inefficient, but got to their free throw line a ton. Grayson Allen struggled. Mark Williams was super efficient and stuff like that. You know, I think their team is just really good, all things considered. Like, obviously not the talent, but just the way they play. Just playing by committee and just working together. And the new coach with Jordan Ott, I think he has been also doing a really good job, I think. So it's going to be a tough game today, I feel like. Definitely not as much of a easy game that I thought with the Trailblazers game and the Timberwolves game, so there's a good chance we'll lose even worse than this. But yeah, let's just look at their team stats again, because it's probably updated, you know, with the introduction of Dillon Brooks. So they're really good at stealing the ball, which is very interesting. They do cause the most amount of turnovers for their opponents, so we've got to be very careful about, you know, keeping the ball and not turning it over, because they're good at, obviously. But the thing is, it doesn't really help them too much because of the fact that they are also 26th in the league in their own turnovers, so the turnover difference here is only 1, so obviously it doesn't help them that much. But again, we should still be careful because turnovers have been the bane of their existence. So field goal percentage, they're actually kind of middle of the league, but they do shoot really well from 3, 7th in makes, 9th in attempts, and 12th in percentage is very good. But obviously the reason why they're only 17th in field goals is because their 2-pointers have not been good, 21st in both makes and attempts, and percentage wise they're 18th. They actually don't really go to the free throw line often too, so that keeping that the case too is going to be important, because if they end up getting to a free throw line, that means that's additional points that on top of their already pretty good 3-point shooting, so definitely prevent that. Rebounds, they're very good at offensive rebounding, so that's that. We got to be on top of that, but they're not good at general rebounding, so, you know, it could be a bit lax there. Obviously, we still want to be good at it, but still, yeah. Defensively, they're a pretty good team, 9th in points opponents scored, and then they are 16th in defensive rating, so, you know, the difference between raw numbers versus, you know, an actual rating adjusted based on, like, you know, other stats. Because when you look at it, they actually, like, their like field goal attempts, they limit a lot, but the overall percentage is still pretty bad. Like, people still scoring on them, but they are pretty middle of the pack, but still slightly above average in terms of defending the 3. So that's why I think, you know, their overall points can be low, but their defensive rating itself is not as good. Yeah, I mean, in the assists, opposing team assists, they're 10th in the league, so that's pretty good. Which does make sense because the amount of steals they get is so high, so they prevent those passes from going out, you know, obviously. But they do also commit a lot of personal fouls, which means that, or they commit a lot of personal fouls, but they don't also make the opposing team commit personal fouls. I think that's what that means. So getting to the paint is a very big, I think, factor for the team, for the Warriors, to make sure we go into the paint, get to the line, you know, score points there. Hoping JK, when he gets his playing time, doesn't shoot threes as much. It doesn't shoot those mid ranges. It just drives, just straight up drives. I'm just very scared that there might be a Colin Gillespie game today, and I'm like feeling it a little bit that might happen. So please prevent that, please. Okay. I think X factor today will be pods, just because of the fact that Pat's not playing, so someone has to take on the ball handling duties. And obviously D'Anthony Melton's gonna take on that most likely, but again, Pods needs to probably take on it more too. And he's been playing pretty solid, you know, besides that, literally that one game that everyone hated him for, even though he gets hate for like literally every single game he plays. But besides that one game where he barely scored any points, he has been playing pretty damn good. So yeah, I mean, he scored 12 points, 4 for 7, 3 for 3, 1 for 4 from 2. So didn't score well inside, but he scored threes, really like 100%. Got 7 rebounds and 6 assists. You can't really ask for much there. And he had the one stinker here. The Philly game, he did stink too, but that game, he didn't even play much anyways. So that's that. So again, if you yeah, really look at it. Besides that, it's like 10 points here. Not much of a scoring game, but you only played 21 minutes and you still won the game. 4 for 9, 2 for 3, still really good. And then the Chicago game, he scored 21, was literally one of the best players on the team that Chicago game. So that's why I just was like, hey, at least he's out here doing stuff for us and not literally creating a open roster spot as a whole, missing games. Okay, that's what I have to say. I'll also say though, D-Mount, man, he's been looking real good. Like he's looked like he hasn't really messed a step from when he was back when he was really good for us last year. So I expect him to get more minutes as the season goes. He's been really good for us. So yeah, I think that's about it though. Thank you guys for watching, and be sure to subscribe. I could use more subs. Haven't been really getting much subs, so I can definitely use some. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.